is a podcast about all things holistic health and self-discovery with me, Ask Elizabeth, counsellor, health advocate and fundraiser. Join me as we get to know these guests and learn about how they implement health, well-being and self-care practices into their lives. Welcome to Unearthing Wellbeing with Ask Elizabeth, where our greatest wealth is health. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of Unearthing Wellbeing. This week I had Simon Holloway on the podcast. He is the co-founder of Vegepod. My Vegepod journey began a few months ago when I got my very own Veggie Bag and have seen with my very own eyes the amazing benefits this has, not only because you get to eat organically, but on a holistic level. We discussed where the idea for Vegepod came from, as well as a plethora of benefits of therapeutic horticulture, which you can take a listen to now. Hi Simon, welcome to Unearthing Wellbeing, where your greatest wealth is health. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Elizabeth. How about yourself?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. As I was saying to you before, I got the jab yesterday, and I guess it's a hot topic at the moment.
Good on you.
But yeah, I think it's just necessary with the times we're in. But
You bet. I think it's a fantastic thing that we live in this modern day world where we do have the privileges to receive modern medicine at times when we need it. So I think you have to look beyond yourself, and it's a community thing, and it's indeed the whole planet. So we should all be helping each other and getting it done, is my view.
absolutely, and like everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but it is what it is.
Of course. Yep. Well, at the end of the day, everyone will choose themselves, and everyone has that right. So whether that means you then get to enjoy other community privileges will be another whole argument, I'm sure. But I'm certainly looking forward to getting mine this weekend too, Elizabeth.
Yeah, awesome. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to my listeners.
Yeah, well, my name's Simon Holloway. I'm one of the three owners and founders of Vegepod. My role is head of sales and marketing and community programs. So a little bit broad. My business partners are Matt, who was the inventor and head of product development, and my other business partner is Paul, who acts like the CEO. And so I'm off doing a lot of things, but the wellbeing programs is a huge part of it, and indeed the favourite part of my job.
That's amazing. And I guess, how did Vegepod begin?
Well, it's literally one of those backyard stories, and it's actually driven a lot of interest in Australia about the business side of the story, let alone the actual product, because it really is one of those Aussie backyard battler stories where Matt was a frustrated and a failing gardener, and thank God he was failing, because that was then the mother of his invention, because he put his mind to it, and every time he came across a pain point in edible gardening, we're specifically around generally vegetable gardening, he came up with a solution to meet that problem. So be that underwatering, be that overwatering, be that pests getting to it, be that the inclement weather harming his vegetables, be that weeds, or his sore back from bending over, or accessibility, you name it, he just went from one-to-one pain point and came up with a solution. And what you see as the Vegepod today is the all-encompassing garden bed that is extremely low maintenance, extremely organic, and enables absolutely anybody and everybody, irrespective of your challenges, be those mental health challenges, be those physical challenges, whatever. Everybody can now grow. And over the last 11 years, us three musketeers have gone around and brought Vegepod to the world, be that through the retail store networks like garden centres and Mitre 10s to, we had a great time on Shark Tank, which got us aware from a lot of people with our new invention. And as of last month, I think Vegepod Switzerland was the last office we opened, and that's now 19 countries around the world. And we're just having a great time doing it. And there's not much better product to go around and sell and promote than something like a gardening product, which is not only good for individuals, but it's good for the society and it's good for the planet. So we're all very happy people.
That is incredible. Absolutely. And it's like DIY, right? So if you can actually
exactly. Exactly. And that's part of the fun as well. It's we're analogized often as the Weber of garden beds or the KitchenAid of garden beds, a high quality product, one that you want at home, feature rich, good quality, all that sort of thing. But, when I've got my KitchenAid and my Weber here in my place, I pull it out of the box and went, done. I mean, ours is, it's not hard to put together by any means. It's no tools are required. We've got 5-year-olds and 85-year-olds doing it alike. But there is that process of assembling it and sliding it together and popping the canopy on, all that sort of stuff. And we actually embrace that part of it. Indeed, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later, with our community programs and the teamwork and the bonding and the camaraderie and the sense of responsibility and ownership and all of that sort of stuff actually breeds a lot better out of something that you put time and effort into and build. So assembling the Vegepod is often our stage one in our community programs or our wellbeing programs of getting teams, whether that be the daycare and all the little kids getting together, be that the aged care home and all the residents coming out, be that the community housing project where they're all coming out and joining together to build the pod. That assembly stage, that DIY part that you mentioned, is actually a very important part of starting on that journey. Yes, we've made it easy, but it's an important part, and we like to see people getting their hands dirty.
So true. And I saw that when I did the Veggie Bag, which obviously isn't as hard to assemble. But for those with like a small courtyard or like who live in an apartment who can't actually have a veggie pod, they've got the luxury of now having the Veggie Bag. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's right. That was the newest. We said, I think our tagline was Vegepod has had a baby, and we've called it Veggie Bag because it does have a lot of the key DNA from our Vegepods, i.e. self-watering reservoirs below the soil, the protection canopy and microclimate. We also have the easy access, the fact that it can also go anywhere because it's got a hard base and the pull handles means a lot of those benefits from Vegepod. But as you alluded to, it's quite a lot smaller. So all of those little areas like tiny balconies or in your alcoves or in front of your stairwell, now you can use the Veggie Bag. Basically anywhere where you have a pot now can be replaced with our vegetable growing bag, right? So, we're very proud to have that added to the edition. It's a great entry point for novice gardeners or perhaps people who are a little bit budget conscious. And the fact that it's only $89 makes it a rather low cost garden product. So, we weren't in that space before. The Vegepods are quite up the other end. So it's great to be able to enable people of all budgets and of all spaces and applications be able to enjoy this kind of gardening.
Absolutely. And I love the journey, and which I'll be showing via video after this is released, because I love seeing the growth over a span of time. And just eating organic natural foods is just so exciting for me.
Yeah, and it should be for everybody, and I think there's a lot more consciousness around these days, Elizabeth. It's beyond the trendy side of being organic. I think the everyday person now realises the other advantages beyond a trend, and that is health. The taste, for example, is a huge one. You can't compare the flavour of a homegrown tomato to those awful hydro ones in the supermarkets. And also knowing that not only is it healthy from an individual's perspective, but healthy for the planet. And it's a huge thing. And I use this quote ad nauseum, but Eric Toinsmeyer he was Barack Obama's one of his senior advisors on Project Drawdown. He's the author of the Carbon Farming Solution, so right at the top of the game in this area. And his quote that I love pulling out, which was mentioned on that wonderful documentary 2040 with Damon, is the number one thing that you or I can do at a household level, at an individual level, to help save the planet, to help reduce emissions. The gold standard is to grow your own food. And that's all about, Elizabeth, about reducing those carbon miles that goes into the production and the shipping and the processing and the refrigerating and the workers and all of that used. That, for example, my great example is the frozen berries from Chile, for example, that we get in our supermarket. The carbon footprint that goes to that one little bag, let alone also the packaging and everything else, is mind-boggling, and it's scary when you look at it. So we are very pleased to not only be providing people with a healthy organic product for their body, and a beautiful tasting one at that, but we're also every time enabling people to grow food at home, we're saving the planet.
So true. And I even noticed, like, because I've got a little bit of a veggie bed where my cart is, in comparison to the veggie bag, it's obviously thriving more in the bag and there's no bugs biting into the food. So that's just another bonus.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's that's what we're all about, is to make sure that people have the least challenges, the least problems once you get growing. Like you want to get to the fun stuff. I mean, there are some great things about facing those challenges and getting in touch with the seasons and learning what that, soils ain't soils. There's a difference between just dirt that you've dug up beside your driveway versus getting a beautiful premium soil that you have to learn about how much sun your plants are getting in this position versus that position. So there are some great things on that learning journey that you'll get. But certainly what we're trying to do is, at least once you get going, let's not have the pests eat it, the possums or the butterflies, and let's not let that wild storm come and destroy the bed that you've looked after so well, and let's not let the weeds override and take over your things. So, yes, we're getting rid of all that. We're helping people who in their busy lives may forget to water. They self-water from below. We also have an overflow so that people who are a little bit overzealous in their early days don't flood them as well. So it makes gardening very easy, particularly edible gardening, but it's also not detaching you completely from that growing journey, which is just as important.
Absolutely. So true. And like, I think of people like my dad who's got back issues, and being that like your veggie pods actually are raised. Can you tell us more about the benefits of that?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that it's around that back. I mean, we've had so many people get the Vegepod just for the stand alone because they've got sore backs. They may have accessibility issues, so wheelchair or Zimmer frames, or it just gardening so much. You don't have to be old to get a sore back, mind you. I mean, I don't consider myself that old, but I get sick of bending over in my standard beds or getting on your knees. So if you're doing a lot of it, you'll feel it. Within 10 minutes, your back starts to go, human body not meant for this. So having it up high, and when I say properly high, again, if I may say, a lot of these other so-called raised garden beds are indeed raised because technically they are above the ground. But as soon as you're 5 centimetres, 10 centimetres above the ground, you're in the raised bed category, right? But, I'm sorry, in our books, that ain't raised. I mean, it's what we're trying to do with our raise is not only raise it to contain the soil, but raise it so that you're not bending over, so that you're not on your knees, so you're not causing pain, so you can get your wheelchair accessible. So ours is one of the very few beds in the world that is properly raised to waist height, but also importantly, any other raised garden bed out there, the fixed raised garden beds that are raised to our same level up to the waist, you're then having to use 2, 3, 4 tons of soil to fill the bloody bed to get it up to there, right? Whereas because of our containment and our design, if your folks listening have a look at it, we still raise, but we only use a foot of soil, which is enough. Through our studies, we know that's enough for your root vegetables and your bulbs and whatnot. So if you're growing a carrot greater than 30 centimetres, you might as well go to the Sydney Roll Easter Show and win a prize, right? So we've got enough depth there, but we've also taken away all that 2 ton of fill and rubble and whatever else you're normally having to use to raise it that high. So just our raised height alone, and the fact that some of them come on trolleys as well, has made a real differentiator for Vegepod, and one that we're very proud of.
You should definitely be proud of that, and it's so exciting to get into this space. Like, as I said before, you can, like, anyone of all ages can actually do this. And if you're like at home listening, if you're a mum or a dad with little kids, this is a perfect way to teach them about growing and then also appreciating what is going from the garden to your home, to your plate.
So much. Oh, there's so many angles to it, isn't there, Elizabeth? But you're right, like the family one, and without discounting people's struggles and hardships, which we know has occurred, I like to also remind people that this whole pandemic thing and the fact that we're being forced to stay at home for long periods of time, there's been a lot of good that have come out of that. A lot of good comes out of struggles. As the Buddhists say, that the lotus grows out of poo, right? It's if you don't get that beautiful flower if you don't have all that muck and the crap below. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's a struggle, yes. Is it tough? Yes. Has it made us want to get back to normal life? Yes. But what are the good things that have come out of that? Well, gratitude for a start of what we were, and that we're not going to take things for granted anymore, that it's made us look at a lot more things in depth that we didn't before. With the fact that you are forced to be closer to your family, you're actually learning a little bit more about those who are closer to you, right?
Yeah.
And what are the bonds that do us, and what can we do as a team together? Things like gardening, of which we're a small part of, that's been wonderful. They've shown emissions have come down. They've shown that people have got into gardening a lot more, that people are learning things, and that they're appreciating their communities and their immediate environments a lot more. So I'm seeing so many positive benefits to this. Someone once said to me recently that it was a toxic positivity, but I don't believe that. I take umbrage to that classification. I think there is a lot of good positivity that we can take out of this without discounting all the other struggles. And indeed,
Absolutely.
Gardening itself, and I think we're going to get into that a little bit later too, there's a whole field of what we call therapeutic gardening that is going on. Some people may be aware of it, some people may be not, some people may want to get into the theory of it, some people may not. Whatever, when you are gardening, in whatever form or manner it may be, it doesn't have to be edible gardening like us. It's amazing, and it helps people on not only a physical level, but on a mental level and a spiritual level. I urge everybody out there to give gardening a crack. Now is the perfect time, as you alluded to, and indeed do it with your whole family, because gardening is a non-prejudicial activity. Young, old, male, female, rich, poor, city, country, desert, seaside. It is applicable to every culture, to every sort of custom, to everywhere, rooftop, backyard, balcony, indoors. Gardening, I defy anybody out there to tell me what's another activity that we can all do that crosses all those demographics and all those cultures and all those customs, which is indeed why we've now spread to 19, 20 countries. It's good for anybody and everybody. So get out there and garden, and even the sorts of people you are. It doesn't matter what ilk, what walk of life. I mean, I've gone to prisons, the hardest nuts of hardest nuts, who you think might turn up their nose and probably clobber someone like me with a mouth. Those are the guys who I've seen garden and get right into it, right? And I've seen some old farts who have got their nose turned up at me at the aged care centres where I go to and say, oh, what's this young pop got to say? And they get into the gardening. You go to the school where these young kids go, oh, God, how boring. Can we just get back out and do some PE or support, please? And get into it. They get into gardening. You can get everybody into gardening. At worst, it might be a little bit innocuous and they go, it's not for me. But generally, for the most part that I've seen in all areas of community and society, people will get into it.
Yes, so true. And as a counsellor, like, we always like tap into different modalities and therapies, techniques, and so forth.
Right.
And this is one that can have the most profound benefit. So leading on from that, what have you noticed from a holistic point of view, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah.
Like, what are the benefits that you've seen and heard about, plus like the organic taste, etc.?
Yeah. Well, I mean, probably to make it real, I think probably the best way that you can express is from one's own experience, right? So, I can't speak for everybody else, but I can certainly speak for myself, and I will argue that I can speak for others thereafter. I certainly know that over the years, before I even heard about the term therapeutic gardening, before I even heard about wellbeing gardening, was that every time I was out in the garden, I felt good. Now, what does good mean? Well, it means that I was focused and I wasn't thinking about work or some other problems, that I was able to go off into a different place. Is that just a mere distraction? Maybe, but sometimes distractions ain't a bad thing when you need to go somewhere else. But it was also other things going on. For me, it was also about getting in touch with those little things. The fact that you're now looking after something and it's not just all about you. Some people, you talk about the pet therapies. Well, I tell people who are starting to get into that side to step back and also go, you know what, that's what applies to garden therapy. You are now responsible for that life of the plant. You get in touch with the seasons, i.e. you're getting in touch with the environment. Oh, broccoli can't grow in summer. Oh, this one, you can't grow a tomato in winter. All that stuff where you start realising or not realising that's going on, getting in touch with the seasons and which one needs more sun and which one doesn't, which one needs water, which one doesn't. Oh, this one's more susceptible to weed attack over here. This one's more susceptible to insects. And how do the insects, oh, hang on a minute, if I get the aphids, the ladybugs can come and eat them. There's a whole web of life going on here. That is therapeutic, and that gets people into this whole wonderful world of the web of life, and I've also experienced myself where it's, there's a whole joy about, and I'm going specifically into edible gardening here, there's a whole joy of that, watching something that goes from a tiny little seed. I mean, you see the size of a tomato seed, for example. Are you kidding me? Right? It's you can barely see the seed, and it grows into a 10-foot tall tomato vine tree with huge heirloom tomatoes, bigger than your fist, that you then harvest, that you then share with your family or your friends and go through that whole ceremony of cooking. Because that's what also, by the way, edible gardening does. It leads you onto that next step of the world of cooking, which I could wax lyrical about too. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah. That whole ceremony of giving, it's a beautiful thing, right? And those, you don't have to be a foodie to appreciate that part of it, right? But you will become a foodie anyway, right? So there's all these angles that never cease to amaze me of the therapeutic side of it. And as I said, I've done it in many community areas, schools, disadvantaged schools, juvie justice, social housing, halfway houses, women's refuges, disability hubs, aged care. All of these areas, as I said, it's my favourite part. And you know what's my favourite part? Is because I do see and experience, Elizabeth, what you were saying, those moments, and sometimes they're small. It may be just what they call a liminal moment, where it's this resident A from the social housing block for the first time has come outside this year and had a chat with one of the other residents. Why? Because it was over the garden, and because gardens cross those cultures, across those boundaries. And I remember distinctly going to a recent immigrants housing. Community housing, and it was a wonderful thing. People from all around the world, and we were growing stuff there, and the tenant engagement officer there pulled me aside and said to me, Simon, I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I have not seen anything that epitomises what we're trying to do in an activity more than what this garden is doing. We had Mrs. Tran, who recently immigrated from Vietnam, was able to talk about how she used the eggplant in her stir fries. And we had the guy from Lebanon who was using it in baba ganoush. And we had one of the guys from Africa who was using this big tomato and eggplant stew pot. They had something all in common over the one plant, different dishes, and conversations were starting. And that to me was like, my job is done here. I thought that was fantastic. And that sort of stuff happens in all different areas. And because I think all of your listeners out there now, if you start thinking about, even though I'm not a gardener myself now, and perhaps we've lost a bit of that art, which indeed we have, everyone's got a story about either their parents or their grandparents or their own great uncle that they knew, or something in their heritage about gardening, and not just gardening, but specifically growing food. And people can share those stories if for nothing else. And that to me brings a lot of mental well-being, a lot of community spirit, and a lot of understanding across us all that I think we should all be able to reap the benefits of.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that horticulture can actually save lives, because you're actually getting out one with nature, you're seeing things grow, and yeah, it's just so special.
It's true. It's true. It's and that's why I say not just mental and physical therapy, and you can go right down to the very basic. A lot of the aged care homes and disability hubs will use our gardens, as they say, from the occupational therapist point of view. They go, no, Simon, don't let them use the automatic mist spray that you got in there. I want them to lift up the watering can, stretch, pour out, hold muscle strength, all that stuff. So that's very interesting. But for me, that's kind of just a very, just one part of it. Then you go to the mental health. But then I also go to that other street. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow any man-made or man-written religion. But that doesn't mean I'm not spiritual. And I think that's for a lot of people, right? And I think you can find spirituality in the garden and with plants, because it's all about life and as I said, tapping into those other things before. And talking to a lot of these people in those community areas through our therapeutic gardening, be that from the correctional services or the refuges or whatever they do, when you say it saves lives, they said, I'll tell you, this has given people meaning. It's given them a healthy focus outside of their usual challenges, and gives them hope that there are things that they can get involved in. Some people have even used it as a new skill set and a capacity building to get people to potentially go into Cert 3s and whatever, or Cert 2s of horticulture at TAFE. So, we could just keep going on, couldn't we? But the Therapeutic Horticulture of Australia Association, the THA, is a wonderful group that we are very proud to be part of. So I urge anybody out there listening, Elizabeth, amongst your crew, to go and have a look, to join. And because, again, I think absolutely everybody either knows somebody or is indeed a worker themselves in these fields. Aged care. Who doesn't know somebody that's in an aged care home? Daycares. Who doesn't know someone that's has a 2 to 4 year old in a daycare? Schools, hospitals, prisons, disabilities, be that physical disabilities or mental disability. If you know somebody that's dear to your heart, or indeed if you work in those areas, such as a nurse, a teacher, a correctional officer, a tenant engagement officer, if you've got any relation to that at all, I urge you to go to the THA website. Have a look. It's bugger all cost. And there's a whole lot more around this compared to, probably better articulated than what I've been putting it. But, it'll add all that. It's got the academic rigor there and the evidence and the studies and all that stuff, which is great. But also it will get you in touch with other people who are engaged in the activities around this. And it's PLUs, right? People like us that are going to be on there that you're going to be able to engage in. There's an annual conference that goes on, and it's a really wonderful group, and there's a lot of good coming out of it. And we are very proud major sponsors of that. just to show our commitment to these areas of therapeutic gardening.
And you should be so proud. And another partnership that you've got is with Southern Cross University to create community programs. I know you would have touched on that, but is there anything else that you wanted to leave with our listeners?
Well, look, Southern Cross University was a great thing. Dr. Kate Neal was the lecturer and the research fellow that co-designed the initial programs. I must say, not all of our 7 programs were with Southern Cross University, but the first, I think, 3 or 4, the aged cares, the kindies and the schools were, and disabilities 4. So the other 3 have been with other experts in their relevant fields. But I think the most important thing there, Elizabeth, is that what that tells people is that what we're doing is not just pie in the sky stuff. It's not just Simon banging on with his little evangelical speeches about how it's great for me. This has got academic research and evidence behind it. The Southern Cross University put themselves to it. It's also was supported by the Fed, so the federal government's behind it. So it's got the big government tick on it, right? So that's a very rare holy trinity in any industry when you get academia, government and industry, i.e. us, all working together and to come out with these programs. So we were very proud of those. They are free. So if anybody is interested in looking at our free gardening programs, they're all underpinned by this therapeutic horticulture for those areas I've been mentioning. Please get in contact with our community programs manager. That's Leia, Leia, at vegepod.com.au or the info at. And we're happy to send that out free because the most important thing is to get these people gardening. Whether you use the Vegepod or not is actually not the ultimate thing. It's great. We would obviously love it if it was a Vegepod, but look, it's not about that. That's why we're happy to hand those out willy-nilly free of charge. So, yes, it's got the academic rigor, it's got the government ticks, and a couple of those programs too will actually help the users, the gardeners, the organisers to get through the red tape that they face throughout these organisations that we know are bound to occur. They also give you a little guidance about not just how to get the therapeutic gardening going, but, you may not be much of a green thumb. That's okay. The Vegepod will help that, and our guides will also ensure that at least you get those bits going on how to grow and you can focus on the fun parts.
So true. And thank you so much for offering that to organizations / people, because I think it will make a massive difference to people's lives, and that's the ultimate goal. You bet. Yeah.
Well, thank you for helping us get that word out there, Elizabeth. It means a lot, and it's we really appreciate anybody who's helping get that word out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I just love I think because it comes from a holistic point of view, I think it's really important to actually pinpoint those. So it's not only about the supplements you take or the techniques that you use like yoga or meditation, whatever. There's this part that's massively underpinned with what we do in just everyday life.
You bet. It's you can't expect to be out in the garden for 12 hours a day. So it's not out there to replace all those other wonderful activities like you mentioned. The yogas and eating. You're also not going to supply all of your food from it. You've got to get real, but you'll certainly supplement it. But anybody that says, am I going to be self-sufficient? Well, I tell them you better get 50 Vegepods, right? But so look, that's not going to happen, but it's certainly a wonderful activity in that it does encompass, I think, and I would argue, a lot more than many other activities. Not to put down yoga at all, because I know how popular it is and it does some wonderful things. But unlike gardening does, whilst you're actually doing it, you're picking tomatoes as you do it, you're eating. So it's all about your gut health. It's also you're outside. You're having to do that outside, which is a great force of vitamin D, all that sort of stuff. It's getting your body moving. It's getting you out there feeling all those elements of nature and the wind and the rain. Rain's a great thing when you get out there. You start to appreciate that a lot more. So I've obviously, obviously I'm a big gardener supporter, so I'll always get out there and say I think it's the best of all those activities. But it really is something worthwhile looking into, and you don't have to have it dominating all your life and all your free time. You can make it as small or as large as you like. I mean, literally like your veggie bag you've got, Elizabeth, you don't have to spend more than 5 minutes a day on that if you don't really want to just checking in on it. But if you want to go big, look, there's a whole movement out there called grow food, not lawns, right? Lawns in some ways, although it gives you a great spatial well-being, because sometimes you need that feeling of, right, sitting down on your lawn. But I'm very much of the former, grow their food, not lawns. Let's forget burning fossil fuels and mowing lawns or creating plastic fake lawns. Use that area like our oldies used to and grow some food, because it's going to bring you a whole lot back onto the table, let alone all those other activities.
That's a perfect point of advice. And is there anything else that you want to give for people who are wanting to start with horticulture?
Look, but not just horticulture, but my advice, if you want to get into any industry, is get off your backside and make direct contact with people that are in the industry, right? Seek is all well and good and applying for jobs and looking up internet and going to a course. The world is still run by people, and behind all these machines and firms and entities and whatever, essentially it will come back to people, right? And so that little sort of smart ass comment that's made sometimes, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, there's actually some good credence to that, because the reason being is, if you do know somebody, it helps you get a job. Now, you don't have to know them well, and what I'm trying to get to is make the effort to go and contact some people that you think may not even give you the time of the day to answer back, and some of them won't. But you're going to get people, nice people, and people who you'll be surprised at how often people don't mind helping out somebody else for nothing. And I certainly did a lot over my career. I'd contact people that are quite well regarded in the industry and say, hey, listen, I'm Mr. Nobody here, but can you give me a word of advice on who to go to, or where I should go to, or what I should attend, or how I should approach to get into the industry? And you'll be surprised at how many people go, yeah, mate, do this, do that, or I can introduce you to this person and that person. Go to people. Forget all these other systems and all that and computer stuff to get it. And you'll be surprised at how much help you can get. So in horticulture, what does that mean? I don't know. If you're going to the garden centres, your local one, go ask the manager. Go ask the guy that you talk to off in the shop. Or if it's someone on TV that you see who has been doing a lot of stuff, and it's, he's the landscape celeb on the block or whatever, try sending him an email saying, mate, I want to get into that stuff. What do you suggest? You'll be surprised at how people will help and give you a little bit of a hand up if you ask and you're humble and you're genuine in asking for a bit of support.
So true. And I've actually noticed that even with my podcast, like the people who have actually said yes to coming on, I've been so surprised like that they've actually taken the time out of their busy schedules to actually say yes, including yourself. Like so grateful. But I guess wrapping up from that, like what are your 3 tips for unearthing wellbeing? And I ask this to all my guests.
Yep. Well, I've probably tapped on quite a bit of it already, haven't I? But look, I think that one of the first ones that I would say is to immerse yourself in nature. Now that can be in many different forms, because there are some activities, again, something like yoga, which is very good for you and also mentally good for you, not just physically, but you can do it inside your garage or inside your home. I don't call that really immersing in nature. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm saying every human being needs to, in some form or manner, immerse themselves in a natural environment. And that's why, people who are institutionalized and in prison cells, that's why they get damaged, right? Because they don't even get the opportunity to do so. But we also, in our modern day lives, in some ways, put ourselves in our own prisons, be that home or in the workplace, right? So now that could be, for example, my immersion is the ocean. I like to go surfing. And someone else, it might be well, they call it forest bathing these days as well, don't they? But going for a bushwalk, that's good. You're immersed in that whole nature. For some people, it might even actually be just sitting outside and meditating on the lawn, because at least you're then immersed within the air and the sunlight around you. It may be, lying back and staring at the clouds. So it doesn't have to be something fully intense. It doesn't have to be, just meditating on it, but immerse yourself in nature, and not just also tokenism. 5 minutes. I went down to the beach today and I dipped my toes in the water and I walked on the sand and then I came back. I'm scented out. Balderdash. Yes, I walked up through the street and I went to my children's school and I walked through the park and it was 3 minutes. Balderdash. That doesn't cut it, I'm afraid. I mean properly immerse. And then, so if you're surfing for an hour in the water, or you're going for the bushwork, it's a good 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Proper, solid time, minimum 30 minutes to an hour. If you're going to be staring at the clouds, lying on the back in the lawn, not for 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, listen to the birds or whatever. So immersion in nature and for a proper amount of time would be my first one. Okay, so my second one would be, and I think I've banged on about this already, is that if you want to get a good centering and a good well-being, is start looking after plants. Because not everybody has the capacity to look after animals. That is another level. But I think, as I touched on earlier before, if you're looking after plants, you're looking after a living thing. And it may just be a very hardy cycad that you've got in the corner of the room, so inside one. But if you start on that journey, if you're not looking after a single plant at home at the moment, start on it. And it may be, start with the hardy ones. Start with the succulents or the cycads where they don't need much watering and as much care, like an aloe vera or whatever. But you'll form a relationship with that plant and you'll notice, and you've got to be, in tune with it. Oh, starting to need to water. You're looking after it. It needs a bit more light perhaps to move it around. And guess what? It looks good. And they're pretty well, everybody that starts on that journey, they start becoming the mad, crazy plant lady or the plant guy that's suddenly got, plants draping over their TV and you can't see them and everything else. So look, I'd certainly recommend start looking after some plants. And if you can go that extra step, do the vegetables, the edible plants, because it then brings another whole realm of joy, which is eating and sharing with your families.
Amazing.
The third one would be, which can be a little bit controversial, I guess, is actually to take accountability for your own well-being. Yes, others have caused pain and caused you to become angry, and that's a tricky one. Do you say that they made you angry? Did they hurt you? Yes, it's true. Maybe it's not true. It's also about how you feel and how you want to feel and how you want to take that experience, right? And how you respond to it is and how you handle it is up to you. That's your accountability to get your well-being done, because it's one thing to recognize what made you feel angry or hurt or upset, or why you're not fit at the moment, why you're not healthy in either body or mind or your practices or your habits. Great. And it's so easy then and to then go, but because that, and you then hang on to that, and you're almost defined by it. And I see people, they almost love it, right? They love to be able to have that story and own that story, but they're only then sticking on that story of what caused them pain, what caused them anger. And don't get me wrong, there's some awful, horrible things out there, which is also not easy to get through. I don't want that to be discounted. But my point is, it is then up to each and every one of us, ourselves, not your support coordinator, not your therapist, not your meditation or yoga instructor, not your husband or your wife, and not your employer. It is up to you to find your well-being and how to control that, because the only bloody thing you can control in this world is your own mind. You can't control what someone did to you before. You can't control sometimes those surrounding environments around you, and you can't control the fact that you can get out of work tomorrow because you simply have to go. But what you can control The only thing you can control in this world is your own mind. So take accountability for that and work on it and move forward.
Absolutely. I love those 3 tips. Thank you so much once again for coming on to Unearthing Wellbeing. I think that everyone will enjoy this and actually go out and hopefully start gardening, if not purchasing a veggie pod or bag themselves. It's all about, spreading word, and you've definitely educated us all.
Thanks, so Elizabeth. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and as you can tell by my passion, it's meaningful, and I'm always so happy that someone gives us a platform to be able to spread that message. So thanks again, and hopefully we'll catch up.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I hope you were inspired to start your horticulture journey and bask in the A-class benefits it will have on your life. As Simon said, you can grab yours today on vegepod.com.au. To ensure Ask Elizabeth and Unearthing Wellbeing continues to grow, please subscribe and rate the podcast. Feel free to also share and tag us on your socials. I hope you have a lovely day, be safe and be kind. Take care.